Moreover, these banks have a competitive advantage because they get an implicit subsidy. And you can see it in the data. They can get capital at a lower interest rate because everybody knows that they'll be bailed out. So the too big to fail banks get bigger and bigger, and the small banks get weaker and weaker. And the big banks aren't doing the critical role of lending to small and medium-sized enterprises. So it's undermining our economy. So my view is what we have to do is we have to break them up, we have to tax them, and we have to regulate them. There is some hope that something will be done, and the real question right now, as I said, is whether it will be enough. Finally, I want to come to behavior and products. One of the real problems that in the lead up to the crisis is leverage. We allowed our banks to get 30-to-1 leverage. And just let me explain what that means. That means that when you borrow so much against your net worth, 30-to-1 means that if there's a 3% change in asset values, you're bankrupt. And remember the magnitude of what goes on in the capital markets. Housing prices fell by 30%. Commercial real estate fell by 40%. So a bank that was mostly in real estate was bankrupt 10 times over. We should have known. This is not complex mathematics. This is not complex science. This is really elementary common sense. So that's an example of the kind of thing that has to be stopped. In the United States, one of the things that led to the problem is we allowed the banks to engage in predatory lending and usury. The typical interest rate now in the United States on a credit card is 30% a year. And that doesn't include all the extra fees that they start to charge. So it is not a surprise that a lot of people are in trouble. And there are major, the derivatives were sold to anybody that would buy it. Very non-transparent, very complicated, where the banks didn't even understand it, let alone the buyer. The magnitudes of some of these deals are hard to fathom, but just to give you one flavor, just talking to last weekend to the central bank governor of Mexico, Mexican firms lost $17 billion in derivatives. So much that it had an impact on the exchange rate. And of course now there are massive suits saying you sold it without disclosing what was really going on. So now there's going to be a very large litigation. Naked derivatives, selling short credit default swaps, betting on Greek bonds going down. You all know probably the story. One of the major advisors to the Greek government, at the same time that it was advising the government, was selling short that country's bonds. At the same time, it was spreading rumors that were not true that would have the effect that they would lead for a decrease in the value of the bond so it would make money. So successful was it in spreading these rumors that it got the story into the Financial Times as if it were true, as a headline story. And it worked just like they wanted. The bonds fell and they made a huge amount of money with little regard to the suffering of the country. They will do the same thing in other countries, and they are doing the same thing almost surely in other countries. And yet, so far, we've done nothing about that. In the United States, another important initiative is the Financial Product Safety Commission, making sure that the products that are being sold are safe for human usage. We have a FDA, a Federal Drug Administration, that regulates drugs to make sure that the drugs that are sold do what they say they're going to do and are safe for human consumption. Well, financial products also need to be safe, and important proposals in this area. We're making some progress. Europe is making some progress. It's been very, very slow. Finally, let me just say a word about global coordination. As I said before, a comprehensive regulation is desirable to avoid regulatory arbitrage, but global coordination is often being used as an excuse for doing nothing. Those who don't want regulation know that if you get enough people in a room, they'll argue forever and nothing will happen. To me, it seems to me each country has the responsibility for protecting its citizens and its economy. And so the strategy that countries are beginning to turn to is regulate first and then harmonize later. But let me just conclude in a couple of sentences. Yes, we've pulled back from the brink, but in many ways the world faces more uncertainties than we did a year ago. The most likely prospect remains for a Europe and the United States mired in a slow and unsteady recovery, a Japanese-style malaise, perhaps not as long, hopefully not as long, but unless we get the right policy framework in place, the likelihood of a robust recovery seems but a distant hope. Thank you.
Molt bé, doncs comencem ara amb el torn de preguntes. Dir dues coses. Si us plau, també per la facilitat del senyor Stiglitz, quan feu la pregunta, si us podeu aixecar molt millor per nosaltres i també seria positiu que us presentéssiu. I després també tenim un grup d'estudiants, alumnes de la UAB. Si voleu fer cap pregunta també podeu venir, us aixequeu, pugeu a l'escenari i feu la pregunta, d'acord? Doncs vinga, comencem. Primera pregunta. Alguna pregunta per aquí o són els estudiants, no em sembla? Doncs aviam, tenim a la mesa, a la taula presidencial, tenim un home que vol fer una pregunta. Qui s'apropa a donar-li un micro? Mira, per aquí, senyor.
Okay, dear professor, has been fantastic your presentation and very clear. And my question is as follows. I represent medium-sized and medium-sized company, small companies and medium-sized companies in Catalonia. Catalonia, as you know, has our composition of the business companies are small ones. Maybe the workers are 80% of the total of workers in Catalonia. And then our crisis or our situation produced that many companies, small, really small, hard pressed for the news that are coming from many economists, the institutions, the newspaper and so on, in order to say that the situation is as we are seeing in the newspaper. What is your prescription, our priorities or prescriptions for this kind of companies to go to the future with another situation that we have at the moment for small companies, medium-sized companies? Because I think that in United States you have the same situation. The banks don't give money to the small companies, as the same in Spain, with some difficulties, and the interest rates are really higher, more than the price of the money. Maybe 12%, I remember, 30%, yeah. The same. Please. Yeah.
So,
thanks.
Access to credit is clearly one of the key problems for small and medium-sized enterprises. I went down to President Obama had a job summit at the White House, and I went to a special session for the small and medium-sized enterprises, and it was around that issue, and it was clear that they were facing this difficulty of access to credit.